I wasn't supposed to be in her garage that afternoon. It started with a missed package slip. She knocked on my door earlier that week, holding the little orange card the courier left. "You're home more than I am," she said, a little embarrassed. "Would you mind signing for things if they leave them with you?" Her voice carried that calm authority people in their 40s seemed to have, like they'd already lived through the storms I was still stumbling into. I just nodded. "Sure. No problem." That's how it began. Small errands, shared hallways, a rhythm of accidental crossings. She lived across the hall. I'd see her carrying too many grocery bags, balancing them on her hip while fishing for her keys. She never asked for help, but when I offered, she didn't turn me away either. That afternoon, she mentioned needing her garage cleared. "I've been putting it off," she said, half laughing at herself. "There are boxes and they're older than you." I smiled, even though something about the comment tugged at me. She was probably right. Her garage smelled of cardboard and faint detergent, like a room that had been sealed too long. Sunlight cut in through a dirty window, making strips of dust hang in the air. I started stacking boxes into neater rows, trying not to look like I was snooping. She worked beside me for a while, sleeves rolled to her elbows, hair falling into her face. Every so often she'd mutter something under her breath, about her ex leaving junk behind, about how she couldn't believe she still owned 3 broken lamps. At one point, she pulled out an old photo frame, stared at it longer than she meant to, and then set it face down in a pile. I pretended not to notice. We didn't talk much. Just the sound of cardboard dragging on the floor, the occasional tap of tape against a box. But silence with her never felt heavy. It just stretched, in a way that made me aware of how close we were moving around each other. "You're quieter than most guys your age," she said finally, brushing dust from her hands. I laughed nervously. "Or maybe I just don't know what to say." "That can be a good thing," she replied. Her eyes met mine for a beat too long. Then she looked away, as if realizing it too. It shouldn't have meant anything. A neighbor helping with boxes. But I found myself paying attention to the way her wrist turned when she tied a knot on the trash bag, or how she pressed her lips together before lifting something heavier. Tiny, ordinary things, but they rooted in my chest. I thought about texting a friend later, just to fill the quiet of my evening. But lately, I never hit send. I'd type something like "you around?" and then delete it before the bubbles could even appear. Maybe it was easier not to ask. By the time we were nearly done, the garage looked less like storage and more like a room again. She leaned against the wall, wiping her forehead with the back of her hand. "Locked from the inside," she said suddenly, trying the door. It clicked but didn't budge. She laughed, half surprised, half exasperated. "Well, guess you're stuck with me." Her laugh lingered, echoing off the concrete. I smiled, though something in my chest stirred differently than before. The air felt closer, like the dust had thickened. I didn't say anything. Just nodded, folding the edge of a cardboard flap back and forth between my fingers. And then she looked at me, not casual, not distracted, but steady. Long enough that I wasn't sure if I should look away first. Later that night, when I sat in my apartment staring at the blank draft of a text message, my phone buzzed. Her name. One line. "Still thinking about earlier?" I didn't type back. Not yet. But I couldn't put the phone down either. The next day, I found myself pausing outside her door, listening for any sound before heading down the stairs. It was ridiculous. I wasn't avoiding her, but I wasn't seeking her out either. Except I was. She caught me in the lobby anyway, carrying a bag of groceries that looked too heavy for one hand. "Mind helping me get this upstairs?" she asked. I nodded, relieved she'd asked. Her apartment wasn't much different from mine, just warmer, softer lamps, a stack of unread magazines on the coffee table, a faint smell of lemon polish. She set the bag down with a sigh. "Tea?" she asked, already reaching for the kettle. I sat at the edge of her couch, watching steam rise. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I didn't check it. When she brought over 2 mugs, she sat closer than I expected, folding her legs under herself. For a while we just sipped. The sound of the kettle cooling ticked through the silence. She spoke first. Do you ever feel like you blinked and lost 10 years? Her voice was soft, not looking at me. I shook my head slowly. I don't think I've lived enough to lose any yet. That made her laugh quietly. Lucky you. She wrapped both hands around her mug, staring into it. I got married at 25. Thought I was set. Then, 20 years later, here I am. Sorting boxes in a garage. Her words stayed with me longer than I expected. I wanted to ask more, what happened, what it felt like, but I stayed quiet. She seemed grateful I didn't push. I realized then how much I noticed the spaces between her sentences. When I left, she walked me to the door. I almost said something, anything, but my tongue stuck. On the way back to my apartment, I imagined what I could have said. You make the silence feel less lonely. Or, I don't want to leave yet. Instead, I just heard myself mutter, thanks for the tea. Later that week, she knocked again. This time, she had a light bulb in her hand. Can you help me? The kitchen fixture's too high. I followed her in, trying not to notice the way her hair brushed her shoulders when she tilted her head up toward the ceiling. I steadied the stool while she climbed, her weight shifting above me. Don't let me fall, she joked. I wouldn't, I said. Too quickly. Too sure. She glanced down at me then, eyes catching mine upside down. The light bulb clicked into place, but neither of us moved right away. When she finally stepped down, her hand brushed my arm, not an accident, not entirely deliberate either. Thanks, she said. It was nothing. A small touch. Ordinary. But my skin buzzed like she'd left something there. And for the rest of the night, I couldn't stop replaying the moment, wondering if she felt it too. It became habit, somehow, evenings when I'd hear her door close just before mine, footsteps echoing down the hall. Not planned, not agreed upon, but we kept running into each other. One night she knocked, holding out a plate covered with foil. Made too much, she said. I thanked her, setting it on the counter, though what I noticed more was how she lingered in the doorway. Like she wanted to step inside, but didn't. Eat it while it's warm, she said, finally turning back. The next morning, I saw her in the lobby talking to my friend Ethan. He lived on the floor above me. I caught only a glimpse, but he was laughing at something she said. She touched his arm lightly before walking away. It shouldn't have mattered. But the image stayed sharp, like a pebble in my shoe. When Ethan noticed me, he grinned. Your neighbor's nice. Bit older, yeah, but... He left the sentence hanging. I forced a shrug. She's all right. He gave me a look. The kind of look that saw more than I wanted him to. That night I avoided her. Sat on my couch with the TV volume too low, scrolling my phone but not reading. Every sound in the hall pulled me to the door. Eventually, I opened it just as she was fumbling with her keys. Hey, she said, surprised. I leaned against the frame, trying to sound casual. Everything good? She smiled faintly. Yeah. Just late from work. There was space between us, but it didn't feel like enough. We ended up in her kitchen again. 2 mugs of tea, the light over the table flickering slightly. She rubbed her temple, looking tired. I don't usually have neighbors I talk to, she admitted. Me neither, I said too quickly. She laughed softly, then grew quiet. The silence pressed against us. Her hand rested on the table, fingers curved around the mug. I wanted to reach across, to cover it with mine. But I didn't. Instead, I asked, Does it bother you that I'm young? She finished. Her voice steadied, but her eyes flicked away. I swallowed. Yeah. She exhaled through her nose, almost a laugh. It should. Her words landed somewhere between warning and confession. The kettle ticked in the cooling silence again. She looked at me then, really looked, like she was weighing something. My chest felt too tight. I leaned forward without meaning to, just an inch. She didn't move back. The space between us thinned until I could see the line of her breath. Her lips parted, not quite a smile, not quite anything else. And then the hallway outside filled with voices. Ethan's laugh again, closer this time, followed by the slam of his door. We both pulled back instantly, mugs rattling against the table. She stood, busying herself at the counter. I sat there, hand clenched around nothing. Later, when I left, she walked me to the door. We didn't say much. But as I stepped out, her fingers brushed mine, barely there, like a secret no one could hear. And it was enough to keep me awake half the night, wondering what almost happened. It was raining when I saw her again, one of those steady drizzles that blurred the edges of everything. She was standing outside the building, umbrella tilted awkwardly against the wind. I offered to walk her to the corner store. She hesitated, then nodded. We walked side by side under the same umbrella, close enough that my sleeve brushed hers with each step. The sound of rain on fabric filled the silence. She asked about my day, and I told her. Too much, probably, things that didn't matter. I was nervous, filling the air with words. She listened anyway, eyes focused ahead, her expression unreadable. At the crosswalk, she finally spoke. Your friend, Ethan. He asked me if I wanted to grab a drink sometime. My stomach tightened. And? I told him no, she said simply. The signal changed. We started walking again. My voice felt stuck in my throat. You didn't have to tell me that, I muttered. No, she said quietly. But I wanted to. We reached the store awning, and she folded the umbrella, shaking water from it. For a moment, we just stood there, both damp from the rain. People are going to notice, she said finally, almost to herself. Notice what? This, she whispered, eyes flicking to mine. The word hung between us, heavier than the rain. I laughed, nervous. We're not doing anything. Her mouth curved faintly, not quite agreement. Aren't we? On the walk back, neither of us spoke. The quiet wasn't comfortable this time. It pressed down, each step heavier. At the bench near our building, she stopped. Let's sit a minute, she said. The wood was slick with rain, but we sat anyway, shoulders close under the dim streetlight. She rubbed her palms against her knees, like she was working up to something. I don't know what I'm doing, she said softly. I feel 20 again. And that scares me. Her words sliced through me. I turned toward her, searching her face. Why is that bad? She shook her head. Because I'm not 20. And you shouldn't be wasting your time on someone like me. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. The rain filled the pause. Finally I said, It doesn't feel like wasting. Her eyes lifted, locking on mine. And for the first time, she didn't look away. The air thickened. I leaned forward, just slightly. She didn't move. Her hand shifted on the bench, inching closer, stopping just shy of mine. The space between them felt louder than thunder. My heart hammered. I wanted to close it, to bridge that last inch. But I couldn't tell if she was asking me to, or daring me not to. The rain softened to a drizzle. A car passed, its headlights sweeping over us. She drew in a breath. What happens if we don't stop here? The question hung in the damp night air, unanswered. The next morning, her door stayed closed. No sound of the kettle, no click of heels down the hallway. I lingered longer than usual before leaving, listening, waiting. Nothing. For 2 days, it stayed that way. I told myself she was busy, but the silence started to gnaw. On the third night, I finally heard her door open. She slipped out quickly, a manila folder under her arm, her coat half buttoned. She didn't look toward me, even though I was right there locking my door. Evening, I said. She startled slightly, then forced a smile. Working late. Her tone was clipped, efficient. And then she was gone down the stairs before I could answer. The shift was small, but it landed hard. She wasn't avoiding me, not exactly. But she wasn't there. The warmth, the lingering pauses, gone. I told myself not to take it personally. People had lives. But every time I heard her key turn in the lock, I felt that same tight pull in my chest. On Friday, I ran into Ethan again. He mentioned her casually, as if it were nothing. She mentioned she has a kid, right? Grown, college somewhere out east. I froze. No, I said. Too fast. He shrugged. Guess it didn't come up. It hadn't. She'd never said. The thought stuck to me like wet clothes. There was a whole part of her life she hadn't let me see. That weekend I knocked on her door once. Just once. My hand hovered too long before pulling back. Instead, I sat in my apartment, phone in my hand. I typed out a dozen things. Are you okay? Did I do something? Want to talk? Each time, I deleted them before hitting send. On Sunday night, I passed her in the hallway. She was carrying laundry, eyes tired, hair tied back. She smiled faintly, but it was a polite smile. A neighbor's smile. Not hers. How've you been? I asked. Busy, she said. Her basket shifted in her arms. Long week. I wanted to offer to help, to follow her, to say something that would break through whatever wall she'd put up. Instead, I stepped aside, letting her pass. She paused as if to say more, then didn't. Just nodded, walked into the laundry room, and shut the door behind her. That night I sat on the couch with my phone in hand. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. The room was silent, except for the hum of the fridge. I wrote the words anyway. I miss how it felt before this. But I didn't send it. I set the phone face down and leaned back, staring at the ceiling. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence that I didn't plan it. I just caught her at the wrong moment, or maybe the right one. She was coming back late, coat pulled tight, hair damp from mist. I just stepped out to grab my mail. We froze in the hall. Hey, I said. My voice sounded different, like it had been waiting too long. She gave me a small nod. Hi. Her eyes lingered for a beat, then dropped to her keys. Something in me couldn't let her pass this time. Did I do something? She stopped turning the key. A long pause. No, she sighed. You didn't. The silence stretched. I felt the mail slipping in my hand unread. Then why? I stopped, pressing my lips together. She turned, leaning against her doorframe, folding her arms. Because it's easier, if we keep this small. I almost laughed. Small? None of it felt small. The mistexts, the half-finished sentences, the way her laugh stuck to me longer than it should have. I shook my head. I don't want small. Her jaw tightened. You don't know what you're saying. Then tell me, I said softer now. She looked at me, really looked, tired, guarded, but something else too. The kind of look that says you're about to step off the edge and can't climb back up. I was married half my life, she said finally. I raised a son who's older than you. I know what it costs to want something that doesn't fit. And I can't. She trailed off, her arms dropping to her sides. I swallowed, words catching. I don't care about the math. I care about. I couldn't finish. It felt too big to name. Her hand rubbed at her temple. God, you're too young to carry someone else's mistakes. I stepped closer, not touching her, but close enough that I could see the faint lines near her eyes. I'm old enough to know this isn't a mistake. The hallway went quiet except for the hum of the light above us. She stared at me, the fight in her face softening bit by bit. Like a wall that had been leaned against too long. And then she said it, barely above a whisper. I think about you more than I should. My chest felt like it might break. For a second, I didn't move, afraid the moment would vanish. Then I nodded. Just once. Me too. Neither of us leaned in. Neither of us said anything else. But when she finally lifted her hand, brushing her fingers against mine, slow, hesitant, like testing if the world would allow it, I didn't pull away. Her touch stayed there, simple, human. And for the first time in weeks, the silence between us didn't ache. It just settled. Okay, she whispered. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Okay. Weeks slipped into months. Not all at once, not dramatic, just little shifts. The knocks on her door became regular, but casual. Sometimes for tea, sometimes to borrow sugar, sometimes with no reason at all. We didn't talk about that night in the hallway again. We didn't need to. Something settled after it, a quiet agreement that whatever this was, we were both in it, at our own pace. I started noticing her routines like they were my own. The sound of her kettle whistling at 8:47 a.m. when I was tying my shoes. The way she always left her blinds half open, even at night. The empty bench outside the building that we slowly claimed as ours, rain or not. It wasn't perfect. Some evenings she'd close off again, retreating into silence. Some days I'd second-guess if she wanted me there at all. But the distance never lasted long. One of us would knock, or text, or just sit quietly in the other's space until the air cleared. Once, sitting on that bench in the drizzle, she admitted, "I used to think my best years were behind me." I leaned back, stretching my legs out. "What about now?" She smiled sideways, soft and small. "Now? I'm not so sure." That was how she spoke about us, never directly, never naming it. Just tilting her words so they brushed close without burning. I learned to listen between the lines. We never had a big moment. No declarations, no fireworks. It was her leaving a thermos of coffee by my door before I caught the bus. It was me fixing the light in her kitchen without being asked. It was quiet dinners with mismatched plates, where the silence was easy, not sharp. And it was enough. The last time we sat on that bench, the air was warmer, spring settling in. She handed me her mug of tea, the rim chipped, the handle too hot. I sipped anyway, making a face. "You never get used to how strong you make it," I said. She laughed, tucking her hair behind her ear. "And you never remember to let it cool." It was such a small exchange, ordinary as breathing. But I felt something click, like life had finally finished the sentence it had left me hanging in months ago. I didn't say anything else. I didn't need to. She rested her hand over mine, light but certain. And for the first time, I wasn't wondering what it meant.